The old CHR made 144 horsepower and cost $25,000. This new one starts at $44,900, and the version with the big horsepower number is a $50,000 car. Same three letters, almost nothing else survived. The entry-level model makes 221 horsepower and drives the front wheels. This one, the all-wheel drive, makes 338 horsepower, which coincidentally is also where the CHR's pricing stops looking like that of a subcompact. And yes, 338 horsepower, all-wheel drive. This will do 0 to 60 in almost 5 seconds flat, which is also the amount of time it took the old CHR to decide whether to merge or not. Funny thing is, this is one of the few EVs where 338 horsepower actually feels like 338 horsepower, at least immediately off the line. The character here is the absence of drama. The all-wheel drive cars run a motor on each axle. The SE makes do with one up front driving the wheels you'd expect a sporty badge to avoid. There's no rise and fall to listen for, no point in the rev range where it wakes up because there is no rev range. Engine character is throttle response, and response is immediate enough that you might be able to miss the noise. There are 4 levels of regenerative braking. They're controlled by the paddles on the back of the steering wheel. No, they do not act like shift paddles. The most aggressive level of regen still isn't quite one pedal driving. With an electric motor at each axle, the all-wheel drive cars don't open acceleration by spinning the fronts and waiting for grip at the rear to catch up. The torque arrives at both ends with 0 delay, which is most of the reason why it puts down power seamlessly instead of lighting up the front tires and apologizing. The SE hands all of it to the front axle, which is a different conversation and a slower one off the line. Every CHR gets an NACS port and DC charging standard. It'll charge from 10% to 80% in roughly 30 minutes. Maximum range actually reads backwards from the price. The front drive SE manages 308 miles. Add all-wheel drive and you're down to 281. The 20-inch wheels on the premium take another 8, leaving 272. So you're actually spending more money to go less far. Every CHR gets an NACS port and DC fast charging as standard. And this is the company that spent a decade insisting the world wasn't ready for EVs, now shipping its sportiest small one with the charging hardware as a given. Yes, standard fast charging from Toyota. Battery preconditioning and plug and charge run on a 3-year trial. After that, you're into a subscription. Speaking of which, subscribers get notified when new episodes drop on this channel. Everybody else leaves it to the algorithm. If you want to get notified when new episodes drop on our channel, well, that's what the subscribe button does. The battery sits nice and low in this CHR, giving it a low center of gravity, so it actually corners relatively flat for a modern crossover. Funny thing is, this actually has an appetite for the corners. It's not firmly suspended by any stretch of the imagination, but the low center of gravity makes it very happy in the corners. The suspension is definitely tuned to prioritize ride comfort over outright handling. There's no question about that. Body and wheel control is pretty decent, but it's not exactly buttoned down like some sport badged crossover. What that means is you and your passengers will be very comfortable over long distances. And it does this at about 4,400 pounds. A crossover that heavy has no business cornering as flat as this one does, and that's the battery sitting low in the floor doing most of the work. I gotta say, it handles so well that it could benefit from stiffer suspension calibrations, making this a little bit more buttoned down, sure, giving it a little bit of a firmer ride, but there is potential to make this platform a lot more sporting than it is. And given how quick it is in a straight line, I'd love to see a more sporting version of this CHR. And for clarity, yes, there are paddles that do say plus and minus onto the back of the steering wheel, but they do not shift for you. There is no simulated gearbox here. They simply adjust the level of brake regen. When it comes to braking, I would love one more level. I'd love a true one-pedal drive here because otherwise it works well. When we get into the brake pedal itself, as we are here, it is very clear, very positive. Control modulation is excellent. There's no messy handoff between regenerative braking and actual friction braking when the pads contact the rotors. The brake pedal here is excellent. You've got all the confidence in the world to stop up this quickly. Point it into a corner and the front end commits sooner than you'd expect of something that looks like a crossover. The low center of gravity does the work the suspension would otherwise have to fake, so it tucks in without the lean you'd otherwise brace for in a corner. I won't oversell the thought of feel coming back through the steering wheel rim, because on this loop and in this traffic, it's definitely not the headline. What it does well is change direction without arguing with you about it. The first thing that we have to talk about with respect to the driver interface is the first thing I experience when I'm behind the wheel of a Prius or a BZ. When I am seated in the vehicle properly, seats adjusted properly, the steering wheel's adjusted properly, the top of the steering wheel rim blocks much of the instrument cluster. People of different heights, shorter or taller, I'm not going to experience this, but I'm 5'10" on a good day and I'm seated properly. And this is exactly what I face, and it's identical to what I experience in the Prius and the BZ. Speaking of that instrument cluster, the 14-inch screen and ambient lighting is standard equipment across all trim levels. And for those keeping score, this one's fitted with Toyota Safety Sense 3.0, which is Toyota's comprehensive active and passive safety systems. When it comes to visibility, forward visibility is excellent. We do not have a camera mirror here, but we have large outboard mirrors. Adjust these properly and blind spots aren't real. I know some people who like to shoulder check will complain about this roof line, but again, adjust your mirrors properly and blind spots aren't a thing. Spaciousness up front is excellent. Lots of storage, of course, a couple of wireless phone chargers, and connectivity was really easy. It's perhaps the quickest connection I've made with my phone with any Toyota to date. Toyota calls this interior premium and points at soft touch surfaces, soft text on the SE, and synthetic suede once you're into the XSE. On this short loop, the seats held up and nothing creaked, but premium at this price needs a longer test and a worse road. What I can tell you is the front of the cabin is roomy and the materials you touch don't feel entry level. This CHR has a little bit of a lower roof line, but I've still got a decent amount of headroom, and there's a decent amount of space in the second row. Cargo carrying capacity under the hatch seems pretty decent, but again, you've got that sloping roof line, so you don't have the full utility of a typical squared off shape of an old school crossover. After this brief drive, here's where I net out. This 338 horsepower all-wheel drive version that everybody is talking about starts at about $50,000 here. The one that most people will buy costs less, makes 221 horsepower, and drives the front wheels only. Both at once, it drives better than you think it does, and not as hard as its sporty looks suggest. A coupe profile crossover trades cargo for the way it looks in your driveway. A CHR buyer has run the math, looked at the boxier BZ that holds more for less. There's no winning this person back with a cubic foot count, and Toyota has correctly stopped trying. And sure, the cynics will say that this CHR is just a BZ and more fashionable clothing, but those cynics also need to realize that not everybody needs to maximize utility when it comes to their vehicle purchase. That's our preview of the 2026 CHR. Subscribe if you want to see more of these. Don't if you don't. Comments are open if you disagree, and the merch store link is here if you want to help fund more of these. See you on the next one.